Jake Morrison stared out the window of the Aurora as the ship moved through space. He had been a xenobiologist for 6 years now, studying alien life forms across the galaxy. Today felt different, though. The sensors had picked up something big, something that could change everything humanity knew about the universe. Captain Helen Carter called him to the bridge. When Jake arrived, he saw the entire crew gathered around the main screen. What he saw took his breath away. A massive structure floated in space, bigger than any city on Earth. It was made of materials that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. "They're hailing us," Helen said, her voice steady, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. The screen changed, and Jake saw her for the first time. Queen Lyria Velshara of the Valtheris Empire. She was tall, with silver eyes that seemed to look right through him. Her skin had a faint shimmer to it, like moonlight on water. She wore robes that moved as if they were alive, shifting colors from deep purple to bright gold. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Lyria said. Her voice was melodic, each word carefully chosen. "We have been watching your species for some time. You have finally developed the technology to reach us. We wish to meet with you in peace." Helen accepted the invitation immediately. Within hours, Jake found himself on a shuttle heading toward the Valtheris capital world, Valtheron Prime. He was chosen because of his expertise in alien biology and his ability to stay calm under pressure. At least, that's what Helen told him. Jake suspected there was more to it. The palace was beyond anything Jake had imagined. Towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. Gardens filled with plants that moved and sang surrounded every building. Valtheris people walked the streets, all of them tall and graceful, their eyes watching the human visitors with curiosity. Jake and the diplomatic team were led into a great hall. The ceiling was so high that Jake couldn't see the top. Thousands of Valtheris nobles sat in rows, all dressed in elaborate clothing. At the far end, on a throne that seemed carved from a single piece of crystal, sat Queen Lyria. The formal greetings took hours. Translators worked to bridge the language gap. Jake mostly stayed quiet, observing everything he could. He noticed that many of the Valtheris looked similar to each other, more so than humans typically did. He filed that observation away for later. Finally, the formal ceremony ended. Queen Lyria stood and approached the human delegation directly. This was unusual, Jake had been told. Queens did not typically leave their thrones for anyone. "I wish to speak with your scientist," Lyria said, looking directly at Jake. "Alone." Helen looked worried but nodded. Jake followed the queen into a private chamber. His heart pounded in his chest. What could she possibly want with him specifically? The private room was smaller, more comfortable. Lyria sat down and gestured for Jake to do the same. Up close, he could see that she looked tired. There were small lines around her eyes that the makeup almost hid. "I need your help," Lyria said simply. "My people are dying." Jake leaned forward. "Dying? But your civilization seems so advanced." Lyria smiled sadly. "Advanced technology cannot fix everything. Our people have lived for thousands of years, but we have become too similar to each other. Our royal bloodline especially. We have married within our own families for so long that our children are born weak. Many do not survive their first year. Those who do often carry diseases that kill them young." Jake understood immediately. "Genetic stagnation. Your gene pool is too small." "Yes," Lyria said. "Our scientists have studied this problem for centuries. We have tried everything we know. Nothing works. We need new genetic material, something strong and different." "And that's where humans come in," Jake said slowly. Lyria nodded. "We have been studying your species from afar. Your genetics are remarkable. You adapt quickly. You survive in conditions that would kill most species. Your DNA is compatible with ours in ways that surprise our scientists. A child born from a human and a Valtherus would be strong, healthy, and could save our royal line. Jake felt his mouth go dry. You want to create a hybrid? More than that, Lyria said, standing up. She walked to the window, looking out over her world. I want you to be my husband, my consort. I want you to father my children and become part of the royal family. Jake couldn't breathe. This had to be a joke. He was just a scientist from Earth, the son of a farmer from Colorado. He wasn't royalty. He wasn't special. Why me? He asked. Lyria turned to face him. Because I have watched humans for years. I have seen your broadcasts, your stories, your history. I have seen how you fight for each other, how you love deeply, how you refuse to give up even when everything seems lost. When I looked at your crew files, I saw you. A man who dedicates his life to understanding others, who treats every creature with respect. I saw kindness in your records. I saw strength. She walked closer to him. I do not want just anyone's genetics. I want a partner who will stand beside me, who will help me lead my people into a new era. I believe you could be that person. Jake stood up, his legs shaking. This is insane. I'm nobody. I'm just a guy who likes studying aliens. You are more than that, Lyria said softly. I can see it. The question is, can you? Jake looked into her silver eyes. He saw hope there, but also fear. She was asking him to change his entire life, to leave behind everything he knew. But she was also offering him a chance to save an entire civilization, to build a bridge between two species, to be part of something bigger than himself. I need time to think, Jake said. Lyria nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Jake, please understand. My people do not have much time left. Each year, fewer children are born. Each year, more of them die. If we do not act soon, the royal line will end. Without strong leadership, the empire will fall into chaos. Jake was escorted back to his shuttle. The entire trip back to the Aurora, he couldn't stop thinking about Lyria's words. When he reached the ship, Helen was waiting for him. Well, she asked, what did she want? Jake told her everything. Helen's eyes got wider with each sentence. When he finished, she sat down heavily. This is bigger than both of us, she said finally. This is a decision that affects all of humanity. If you accept, you would be creating the first human-alien hybrid. You would be linking our two civilizations forever. I know, Jake said. That's what scares me. Helen looked at him for a long moment. What does your gut tell you? Jake thought about Lyria, about the sadness in her eyes, about her people slowly dying out. He thought about the chance to save them, to prove that humans could work with aliens instead of fighting them. He thought about the children that could be born, strong and healthy, carrying the best of both species. My gut tells me this is crazy, Jake said, but my heart tells me it's right. Helen smiled. Then you know what you have to do. Jake took a deep breath. He did know. It terrified him. But he knew. He was going to accept. He was going to marry an alien queen and try to save her people. It was the craziest thing he had ever done. But somehow, it felt like exactly what he was meant to do. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months after Jake accepted. Those 3 months were the most intense of his life. He had to learn the Valtherus language, study their customs, and prepare himself for a role he never imagined he would have. Commander Ryan Hughes became his guide and friend during this time. Ryan was a human liaison officer who had been working with the Valtherus for 2 years. He was patient and funny, always ready with advice when Jake felt overwhelmed. The key is to remember that they're just people, Ryan said one day as they walked through the palace gardens. They look different and they live longer. But they worry about the same things we do: family, friends, purpose. Jake appreciated the advice, but it was hard to remember when he was surrounded by beings who could do things humans couldn't. The Valtheris had abilities that seemed like magic. They could communicate with their minds over short distances. They could sense emotions. Some of them could even manipulate energy in ways that defied physics. Lady Sarah Lynn, Lyria's cousin, took it upon herself to teach Jake about court protocol. She was younger than Lyria, with the same silver eyes but a warmer personality. She laughed at Jake's mistakes instead of criticizing them. "You held your cup with the wrong hand," she said during one lesson, giggling. "In Valtheris custom, that means you are challenging the person across from you to combat." Jake groaned. "There are too many rules. How do you remember them all?" Sarah Lynn smiled. "We grow up with them. But do not worry too much. Everyone knows you are human. They will forgive small mistakes. Just be yourself. That is why Lyria chose you." Not everyone was as welcoming as Sarah Lynn. Lord Kael'thor, the Queen's chief advisor, made it clear he did not trust Jake. He was an older Valtheris, his hair silver with age, his eyes hard and calculating. "You are asking us to dilute our bloodline with primitive genetics," Kael'thor said during one council meeting. Jake had been invited to observe, though he was not yet allowed to speak. "How do we know this human will not corrupt our royal family?" Lyria's voice was cold when she responded. "You will address my future consort with respect, Kael'thor. His genetics are not primitive. They are different, and that difference will save us." Kael'thor bowed, but Jake could see the anger in his eyes. He would have to win the old advisor over somehow. The real opposition came from Duke Morvenus. He was the head of a powerful noble family, and he hated the idea of a human joining the royal line. He spoke against it openly, gathering supporters among the conservative nobles. "This is an abomination," Morvenus declared at a public gathering. Jake watched from a balcony above. "Our people have remained pure for 10,000 years. Now we are asked to mix our blood with creatures who have barely left their own planet. I say no. I say we find another way." Lyria stood to respond. "There is no other way. We have searched for centuries. Would you rather watch our children die than accept help from another species?" "That is not strength, Morvenus. That is pride, and pride will kill us all." The argument continued for hours. Jake felt sick watching it. He was causing a civil conflict just by existing in their world. That night, Lyria came to his chambers. It was improper for her to visit him before the wedding, but she did not seem to care. She looked exhausted. "I am sorry," she said, sitting down beside him. "I did not think the opposition would be this strong." Jake took her hand carefully. They had been spending more time together, getting to know each other. He found himself looking forward to their conversations. She was smart and funny when she let her guard down. She loved music and old stories. She worried about her people constantly. "Maybe they're right," Jake said. "Maybe I'm not the right choice." Lyria squeezed his hand. "They are not right. They are afraid. Change is frightening, especially when your entire world depends on it. But fear is not a reason to refuse help." She looked at him, her silver eyes searching his face. "Do you want to leave? If you do, I will understand. I will not force you to stay." Jake realized that he didn't want to leave. Somewhere in the past 3 months, this had become more than just a mission to him. He cared about Lyria. He cared about her people. He wanted to help them. "I'm staying," he said. "We're going to make this work." Lyria smiled, and for the first time since he met her, it reached her eyes. The wedding day arrived. Ships from Earth brought representatives from every major nation. Admiral George Pierce led the delegation, along with Ambassador Claire Watson. They wore formal uniforms that looked plain next to the elaborate Valtheris clothing. Jake's brother Nathan came, too. They hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since a fight about Jake leaving Earth to explore space. When Nathan walked into Jake's room that morning, the tension was thick. "So you're really doing this," Nathan said. "Marrying an alien queen." Jake nodded. "I'm really doing this." Nathan was quiet for a moment, then he stepped forward and pulled Jake into a hug. "Then I'm happy for you. She better treat you right, or she'll answer to me." Jake laughed, feeling tears in his eyes. Having his brother's support meant everything. The ceremony blended human and Valtheris traditions. Jake wore formal clothing from Earth, a black suit that had been in his family for generations. Lyria wore robes that seemed made of starlight, changing colors with every movement. They stood before thousands of witnesses, both human and Valtheris. The ceremony was conducted in both languages. Jake spoke his vows clearly, his voice carrying through the great hall. "I promise to stand beside you, to honor your people, and to help build a future where our two species can live together in peace. I promise to be a good father to our children and a good partner to you." Lyria's vows were longer, following Valtheris tradition, but at the end, she added something that was not in the traditional script. "I promise to love you, not just as a political ally, but as a true partner. I promise to learn about your world as you learn about mine. I promise that our children will know both their heritages and be proud of both." When they kissed, sealing the union, the crowd erupted in cheers. Not everyone was cheering, Jake noticed. Duke Morvenus and his supporters sat silent, their faces dark with disapproval. The celebration lasted 3 days. Jake met hundreds of Valtheris nobles, each one wanting to see the human who married their queen. Most were curious and kind. Some were cold and distant. A few were openly hostile. On the second day, Jake was walking alone in the palace gardens when he was approached by 3 Valtheris nobles he didn't recognize. They surrounded him, their faces unfriendly. "You do not belong here, human," one of them said. "You will bring ruin to our people." Jake kept his voice calm. "I'm here to help, not harm." Another noble stepped closer. "You are a contamination. We should remove you before you poison the royal bloodline." Jake's military training kicked in. He assessed the situation quickly. 3 against 1, all of them bigger than him. But they were nobles, probably not trained fighters. He could take them if he had to. Before anything could happen, a voice rang out. "Step away from my husband." Lyria appeared from behind a tree, Sarah Lynn and 2 guards with her. The hostile nobles immediately bowed and backed away. "You will leave now," Lyria said, her voice like ice. "If I hear of you threatening my consort again, you will be exiled from court." The nobles fled. Lyria turned to Jake, concern on her face. "Are you hurt?" Jake shook his head. "I'm fine, but this is going to be a problem, isn't it?" Lyria sighed. "Yes. Morvenus is organizing resistance. He believes that if he can make your life difficult enough, you will leave and the marriage will be annulled." Jake took her hand. "Then we need to show him that I'm not going anywhere. We need to show everyone that this marriage is real and strong." That night, at the final celebration, Jake did something unexpected. He asked to address the crowd. Lyria looked surprised, but nodded. Jake stood before thousands of Valtheras and spoke from his heart. "I know many of you doubt me. I know you think I'm too different, too foreign, too human to be part of your royal family. You're right. I am different. But that's exactly why I can help. Your people need new blood, new ideas, new strength. I'm offering all of that. In return, all I ask is a chance to prove myself. Judge me by my actions, not by my species." The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with Sarah Lynn and Ryan, then spread through the hall. Not everyone joined in. Morvenus and his followers remained silent. But enough people applauded that Jake felt hope. As the celebration ended and Jake and Lyria retired to their chambers, he realized that the easy part was over. Now came the real challenge: making this marriage work. building trust with the Valtheris people, and eventually bringing new life into the world. 6 months passed after the wedding. Jake settled into his new life, though it was not easy. Every day brought new challenges. He attended council meetings where policies were discussed in terms he barely understood. He learned to navigate palace politics, where every gesture and word carried hidden meaning. He trained with Valtheris warriors, trying to prove he was not weak despite being human. But the hardest part was waiting. Lyria wanted to ensure everything was perfect before they attempted to have children. The royal physicians needed to study both their biologies thoroughly. The bonding ritual required months of preparation, and politically, they needed to build more support before bringing a hybrid child into the world. During this time, Jake grew closer to several key figures. Lord Kael'thor slowly warmed to him after Jake helped solve a trade dispute with a neighboring system. Jake's outside perspective and human approach to negotiation impressed the old advisor. "Perhaps I was wrong about you," Kael'thor admitted one day. "You think differently than we do, but that is not always a bad thing." Ryan Hughes remained his closest friend. They met regularly to talk about Earth, sports, and normal things that helped Jake remember who he was. Ryan also brought news from home. Jake's acceptance of the role had made him famous on Earth. Some people called him a hero. Others called him a traitor to his species. "Don't read the comments," Ryan advised. "People always have opinions about things they don't understand." Saralyn became like a sister to Jake. She taught him about Valtheris culture and history. She also confided in him about her own struggles. She had fallen in love with a common soldier, something that was forbidden for royal family members. "We are prisoners of our own traditions," she said sadly. "You and Lyria are lucky. Your marriage serves a purpose beyond duty." Jake encouraged her to talk to Lyria about changing the rules. If they could accept a human into the royal family, why not allow nobles to marry for love? But Duke Morvenus remained a constant threat. His opposition had not decreased. If anything, it had grown more subtle and dangerous. He no longer spoke against Jake publicly, but rumors spread through the court. Rumors that Jake was controlling Lyria with human manipulation techniques. Rumors that the hybrid children would be monsters. Rumors that the marriage was cursed. Jake tried to ignore them, but they wore on him. Some days he felt like giving up, like returning to Earth where things made sense. But then he would see Lyria and remember why he stayed. They spent their evenings together talking about everything and nothing. Lyria told him about her childhood, about the pressure of being queen since she was barely an adult. Jake told her about growing up on a farm, about his love of science, about the simple pleasures of Earth life. "I would like to see Earth someday," Lyria said one night. They were sitting in their private garden, watching the stars. "I want to understand where you come from." Jake smiled. "It's not as fancy as this. No floating bridges or singing plants." "But it is your home," Lyria said. "That makes it important." She took his hand. "The physicians say we are ready. If you are willing, we can begin the bonding ritual next week." Jake's heart raced. This was what they had been waiting for, but now that it was here, he felt terrified. What if something went wrong? What if the children were not healthy? What if he failed? Lyria sensed his fear. She always could. "We do not have to rush. If you need more time, we can wait." Jake shook his head. "No. Your people need this. We've waited long enough." "I'm ready." The bonding ritual was unlike anything Jake had experienced. It took place in a sacred chamber deep within the palace. Only Lyria, Jake, and the High Priestess were present. The ceremony lasted 3 days. The priestess, an ancient Valtheris named Elder Vaishah, explained the process. "The bonding will link your minds and hearts. You will feel each other's emotions. You will share thoughts. This connection will last your entire lives." Jake had known about this intellectually, but the reality was overwhelming. When the ritual began, He felt Lyria's consciousness touch his own. It was intimate beyond anything physical. He felt her fears, her hopes, her love for her people. He felt the weight she carried as queen, the loneliness of her position. And she felt him, his doubts, his determination, his growing love for her. His memories of Earth, his family, his dreams of exploring the stars, everything was laid bare between them. When the ritual ended, they were changed. Jake could feel Lyria in his mind, a warm presence that was always there. She could feel him too. They were truly bonded now, partners in every sense. 2 weeks later, Lyria told him she was pregnant. The news spread through the Empire like wildfire. Celebrations erupted on every Valtheris world. Messages of congratulation came from Earth. It seemed like everything was finally working out. Then the complications began. The pregnancy was harder than anyone expected. Valtheris pregnancies normally lasted 14 months. But the hybrid nature of the children was causing problems. Lyria's body was struggling to support them. She was sick constantly, weak and in pain. Jake refused to leave her side. He worked with the physicians, using his knowledge of human biology to help them understand what was happening. They discovered that the children were growing faster than normal Valtheris infants. Their human genetics were accelerating their development, but Lyria's body was not prepared for it. "We need to slow their growth," the chief physician, Dr. Yelmora, said, "or they will be born too early to survive." Jake spent days researching, consulting with human doctors through long-distance communication, trying to find a solution. Finally, they developed a treatment that combined Valtheris medicine with human pharmaceutical knowledge. It worked. The children's growth stabilized, but the danger was not over. One night, alarms blared through the medical wing. Lyria was hemorrhaging. Jake ran to her room, his heart in his throat. The physicians were working frantically, their equipment glowing with energy. "What's happening?" Jake demanded. Dr. Yelmora's face was grim. "The children are rejecting her immune system. Her body is treating them as foreign invaders." Jake felt his world collapse. This was exactly what the opponents had feared. The hybrid genetics were incompatible. He had been wrong. He had put Lyria and their children in danger because of his pride. But then Lyria's hand found his. Even weak and in pain, she held him tight. Through their bond, he felt her determination. She was not giving up. She would not let their children die. "Find a way," she whispered. "I know you can." Jake pushed aside his fear and focused. He thought about everything he knew about human biology, about Valtheris physiology, about genetics and immune responses. Then he remembered something from his early research. Valtheris immune systems responded to emotional states. Stress made them more aggressive. "We need to calm her immune system," Jake said. "Not suppress it, calm it." The physicians looked confused. "How do we do that?" Jake thought about the bond between him and Lyria. "Through me. We're connected. If I can project calm, peace, love through our bond, maybe her body will respond." It was a crazy idea, but they were out of options. Jake sat beside Lyria and took both her hands. He closed his eyes and focused on their connection. He pushed away all his fear and doubt. Instead, he thought about his love for her, his confidence in their children, his certainty that everything would be okay. He felt the bond strengthen. Lyria's consciousness reached back to him, desperate and scared. He wrapped her in his emotions, his certainty, his strength. Slowly, her panic subsided. Her breathing steadied. The medical monitors changed. Dr. Yelmora gasped. "Her immune response is decreasing, it's working." Jake held Lyria for hours, maintaining the calm connection. Finally, the crisis passed. The children were safe. Lyria fell into a peaceful sleep. Dr. Yelmora looked at Jake with new respect. "You saved them. Your bond with the Queen saved them." Word of the medical crisis spread. So did word of how Jake had solved it. Even some of Morvenus's supporters began to question their opposition. Here was proof that the human-Valtheris connection was real and powerful, but Morvenus himself was not convinced. 3 days after the crisis, an attempt was made on Lyria's life. A servant had been bribed to poison her food. Jake caught it by chance, noticing a strange smell that his human senses detected, but the Valtheris missed. The investigation revealed that Morvenus had ordered the attempt. He was arrested, but he had supporters who escaped. The threat was not over. Jake realized he needed to be more than just a consort. He needed to be a protector. He began training seriously with the Royal Guard, learning to use Valtheris weapons and tactics. He also started wearing body armor under his formal robes. As the pregnancy continued, Jake and Lyria learned to work together in new ways. He anticipated her needs before she spoke them. She understood his moods and fears without him saying a word. Their bond made them a formidable team. 6 months into the pregnancy, Dr. Yelmora made an announcement. "The scans show you are carrying twins, a boy and a girl." Lyria cried with joy. Twins were considered a blessing in Valtheris culture. It meant balance, completeness. Jake felt overwhelmed. He was going to be a father to 2 children, children who would represent the future of 2 species. That night, lying beside Lyria, feeling their children move within her, Jake realized that his old life was truly gone. He was not Jake Morrison the scientist anymore. He was Jake Morrison the prince consort, the father, the bridge between 2 worlds. And somehow that felt right. The day of the birth came suddenly. Lyria had been stable for weeks, but in the middle of the night she woke Jake with a gasp. Her water had broken 3 weeks earlier than expected. "Get the physicians," she said through gritted teeth. "Now!" Jake ran through the palace halls, his bare feet slapping against the cold floors. He burst into the medical wing, shouting for Dr. Yelmora. Within minutes, the entire medical team was rushing to the royal chambers. The delivery room was a blend of Valtheris and human medical technology. Dr. Kevin Shaw had arrived from Earth 2 weeks earlier, a specialist in high-risk pregnancies. He had been studying Valtheris biology non-stop, preparing for this moment. "How do you feel?" Kevin asked Lyria in his calm, professional voice. "Like I am being torn apart," Lyria said, trying to smile. Sweat covered her forehead. The labor was brutal. Hours passed with no progress. The twins were positioned wrong, tangled together in a way that made natural birth impossible. The physicians argued about what to do. Valtheris medicine preferred natural processes, but this was not a normal situation. Jake held Lyria's hand, feeling her pain through their bond. It was overwhelming. He wanted to take it from her, to suffer it himself. But all he could do was be there, supporting her. "We need to perform surgery," Kevin said finally. "It's too dangerous to wait any longer." Dr. Yelmora hesitated. "We have never performed such a procedure on a queen." "Then today we try something new," Lyria said, her voice weak but determined. "Do whatever you must. Save my children." They prepared for emergency surgery. Jake was not allowed to stay in the room. Protocol demanded it. He paced outside, Ryan and Saralyn with him. The waiting was torture. Through his bond with Lyria, he could feel her consciousness fading as the anesthesia took effect. Nathan had come from Earth for the birth. He sat with Jake, not saying anything, just being there. Sometimes that was enough. Hours passed. Jake wore a path in the floor with his pacing. Then, finally, a sound. A baby crying. Not the melodic sound of Valtheris infants, but something more human, rough and loud and beautiful. Kevin emerged, still in his surgical gear, a huge smile on his face. "You have a son." Jake felt tears on his face. "And Lyria, the other baby?" "They're working on it. Your wife is strong, Jake. She's going to make it." 10 minutes later, another cry joined the first. This one was higher, more musical. The daughter. Kevin came out again, looking exhausted but happy. She's perfect. They're both perfect. Jake was allowed in once everything was cleaned up. Lyria lay on the medical bed, pale and tired, but alive. In her arms, she held two small bundles. Jake approached slowly, his whole body shaking. The babies were tiny, smaller than human newborns. Their skin was a warm brown color, darker than Lyria's shimmer but lighter than Jake's tan. They had fine hair, dark like his, but their eyes, when they opened, were silver like their mother's. "Meet your children," Lyria whispered. "Prince Darian and Princess Alara." Jake took his son carefully. Darian looked up at him with those silver eyes, and Jake felt his heart break and rebuild itself all at once. This was his child, part of him, part of Lyria, and entirely new. Alara made a small sound, reaching toward Jake with tiny hands. He laughed, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, little one. I'm your father." The announcement was made immediately. The royal heirs had been born, healthy and strong. Across the Valtheris Empire, people celebrated. On Earth, the news was broadcast on every channel. The first human-alien hybrids had survived. But in the medical wing, the real work was just beginning. The twins needed constant monitoring. Their hybrid biology was unpredictable. Dr. Yelmora and Kevin worked together around the clock, discovering new things about how human and Valtheris genetics combined. "Their immune systems are incredibly strong," Kevin noted. "They have both human and Valtheris defenses. I've never seen anything like it." "Their neural development is also unique," Dr. Yelmora added. "They have the Valtheris capacity for mental abilities, but also human emotional depth. They will be remarkable individuals." Jake and Lyria barely slept those first weeks. Between feedings and medical checks and visitors, there was no time for rest. But Jake had never been happier. Every moment with his children was precious. Darian was quiet and observant, watching everything with those intelligent eyes. Alara was more active, always moving, always curious. They were different from the start, two unique individuals. The presentation ceremony was scheduled for when the twins were 1 month old. It was a major event in Valtheris culture, the first time the heirs would be shown to the public. Thousands gathered in the capital city. Millions more watched on screens across the empire. Jake wore formal robes, holding Darian carefully. Lyria carried Alara, her strength recovered. They walked onto the royal balcony overlooking the main plaza. The crowd fell silent. "People of the Valtheris Empire," Lyria's voice rang out, "I present to you Prince Darian and Princess Alara, heirs to the throne and children of 2 worlds." She lifted Alara up. Jake raised Darian. The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound was deafening. Even those who had opposed the marriage could not deny the evidence before them. The children were healthy, beautiful, and represented hope for the future. But not everyone was celebrating. In a hidden location, Duke Morvenus watched the ceremony with his remaining supporters. "This changes nothing," he said coldly. "Those abominations will never rule our empire. We will see to that." His second-in-command, a noble named Vorthek, nodded. "What do you want us to do?" Morvenus smiled darkly. "We wait. Children are fragile. Accidents happen. When they do, the people will see that mixing our bloodlines was a mistake." The threats continued, though Jake did not know their extent yet. Security around the royal family was increased. Jake insisted on being part of the security team himself. He trained with the guards, learned their protocols, and stayed vigilant. Lord Kael'thor became an unexpected ally in protecting the twins. The old advisor had completely changed his opinion after seeing Darian and Alara. "They are the future," he told Jake. "Everything we have worked for, everything we are, it continues through them. I will protect them with my life." As the months passed, The twins grew rapidly. They developed faster than Valtheris infants, but slower than human babies. By 3 months, they could focus on faces and respond to sounds. By 6 months, Darian spoke his first word, Papa. Jake cried when it happened. Nathan was visiting again, and he laughed at his brother's tears. You're such a softy. Jake didn't care. His son had spoken. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Alara's first word came a week later. Mama. Lyria was in a council meeting when it happened. She immediately ended the meeting and rushed to the nursery, not caring about protocol. The children showed signs of abilities from both species. Sometimes their eyes would glow slightly, a Valtheris trait, but they also had human stubbornness and resilience. When Darian wanted something, he would not give up until he got it. Alara could make everyone in a room smile just by laughing. Jake's role evolved beyond just being a father. He became a real partner to Lyria in ruling the Empire. His human perspective helped solve problems that the Valtheris had struggled with for centuries. He suggested new approaches to old conflicts. He mediated disputes with a fairness that came from being outside their traditional power structures. The alliance between humanity and the Valtheris Empire grew stronger. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchanges began. Human scientists came to study Valtheris technology. Valtheris scholars visited Earth to learn about human history and art. Ryan established an exchange program where young humans and Valtheris could live in each other's worlds. The first group of participants arrived to much excitement. They were nervous and excited, ready to bridge the gap between species. Sarah Lynn finally got permission to marry her soldier. Lyria changed the law, allowing nobles to marry for love regardless of social class. It was a small change, but it showed that the old ways were shifting. Jake was proud to have influenced that decision. On the twins' first birthday, there was another grand celebration. Darian and Alara were walking now, toddling around the palace with guards constantly watching them. They played together constantly, sometimes fighting over toys, sometimes hugging each other fiercely. Jake watched them play and felt a sense of peace. They had done it. Against all odds, they had created a new generation that was strong, healthy, and happy. The children represented everything good that could come from different species working together. But that night, as he and Lyria put the twins to bed, a message arrived. Security had intercepted an assassination plot. More Venice's remaining supporters had planned to attack during the birthday celebration. They had been stopped, but the Duke himself had escaped. Jake held his children close, feeling their small heartbeats against his chest. The threat was not over. It might never be over. But he would do whatever it took to protect them. They were the future, not just of the Valtheris Empire, but of what the universe could become when different peoples chose to build bridges instead of walls. 5 years had passed since the twins were born. Jake stood in the palace gardens, watching Darian and Alara chase each other through the flowers. They were beautiful children, tall for their age, with their mother's grace and their father's energy. "Darian, be careful with your sister," Jake called out as his son ran a bit too roughly. "She can handle it," Lyria said, coming to stand beside him. She was right. Alara was tough, never backing down from her brother's challenges. She pushed him right back, laughing. The children spoke both English and Valtheris fluently. They switched between languages without thinking about it. They ate food from both cultures. They celebrated holidays from both worlds. They were truly the first of their kind, belonging to two species equally. "They're getting so big," Jake said, wrapping his arm around Lyria. "Soon they won't need us at all." Lyria laughed. "You still have many years before that happens. Valtheris children need their parents for decades." It was true. The twins were 5, but still very much children. They would not reach maturity until their 20s, a blend of human and Valtheris development. Dr. Yelmora had documented every stage of their growth. The data would help if other human Valtheris couples wanted children, and there were other couples now, not many but some. A human engineer had married a Valtheris scientist. A Valtheris artist had fallen in love with a human musician. Their relationships were watched carefully by both societies, but they were accepted. Jake and Lyria had opened a door that others were walking through. The biggest challenge had been dealing with the remaining opposition. Duke Morvenus had stayed hidden for 3 years, occasionally sending threats or trying to organize resistance. But his power had faded. The success of the twins had turned public opinion against him. The end came during a state visit to one of the outer colonies. Morvenus had attempted one final assassination, targeting Jake directly. But Jake was ready. His years of training with the Royal Guard had made him a formidable fighter. When Morvenus's assassin attacked, Jake disarmed him and held him until security arrived. The assassin revealed Morvenus's location under questioning. Jake volunteered to be part of the team that went to capture him. Lord Kael'thor tried to talk him out of it. "You are a prince consort now," the old advisor said. "You should not risk yourself in military operations." "I'm also a father," Jake replied. "As long as Morvenus is free, my children are in danger. I'm going." The capture was tense, but ultimately successful. Morvenus was brought before the royal court to face judgment. Under Valtheris law, his crimes warranted execution. The entire empire expected it. But Jake spoke up during the sentencing. "I know this man tried to kill me and my family. I know he has spread hatred and division. But executing him will only create a martyr. His supporters will use his death to fuel more conflict." He looked at Morvenus, who stared back with defiant hatred. "I propose exile instead. Let him live out his days on a remote world, isolated and powerless. Let his legacy be irrelevance, not martyrdom." The court was shocked. Even Lyria had not expected this. But after much debate, they agreed. Morvenus was exiled to a distant colony where he could do no more harm. His supporters, seeing their leader's pathetic end, finally gave up their opposition. Jake's mercy earned him respect across the empire. Many Valtheris would have chosen revenge, but Jake had shown a different way, a more human way of handling conflict. It proved that his presence in the royal family brought new wisdom, not just new genetics. With the threat of Morvenus gone, life became easier. Jake focused on being a father and helping Lyria rule. He established the Morrison Velshara Institute, a research center dedicated to studying human Valtheris cooperation. Scientists from both species worked there, developing new technologies and medicines that combined their knowledge. One of their breakthroughs came from studying the twins' immune systems. The hybrid vigor of their genetics led to the development of vaccines that worked for both species. Diseases that had plagued the Valtheris for centuries were finally curable. Ryan Hughes became director of the Cultural Exchange Program, which had grown to include thousands of participants. Young humans lived on Valtheris worlds, learning their technology and philosophy. Young Valtheris visited Earth, experiencing human art and diversity. The program created a generation that saw both species as family. Sarah Lynn had children of her own now, 2 daughters who played with Darian and Alara constantly. The 4 cousins were inseparable, always getting into mischief together. Jake often found himself chasing them through the palace, laughing at their energy. Nathan visited several times a year, bringing news from Earth. He had become an important figure in human-alien relations, using his connection to Jake to build stronger ties with the Valtheres. Their relationship, once strained, was now closer than ever. "Mom and Dad would be proud of you," Nathan said during one visit. Their parents had died years ago before Jake left Earth, but their memory remained strong. "I think they would have thought I was crazy," Jake said with a smile. Nathan laughed. "Oh, definitely. But proud, too. You changed the galaxy, Jake. That's not something many people can say." On a quiet evening, after the children were asleep, Lyria approached Jake with a shy smile. "I have something to tell you." Jake looked up from the reports he was reading. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant again." Jake nearly dropped his data pad. "What? Are you sure?" Lyria laughed at his shocked expression. "Very sure. The physicians confirmed it this morning. I wanted to tell you first." Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling overwhelming joy. "This is wonderful. Do you know how many?" "Just one this time," Lyria said. "And the physicians say it should be easier now that they understand hybrid pregnancies better." The announcement of the third child was met with celebration across both human and Valtheris territories. There was no opposition this time, no protests or threats. The success of the twins had proven that human Valtheris children were a blessing, not a curse. When Jake told Darian and Alara they would have a sibling, their reactions were different. Darian was excited, immediately asking if it would be a brother. Alara was more thoughtful. "Will you still have time for us?" she asked, her silver eyes serious. Jake knelt down to her level. "Always. I will always have time for you. Having another baby just means more love in our family, not less." Alara seemed satisfied with that answer. She hugged him tightly, and Jake felt the familiar warmth of his children's trust. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Lyria had some sickness, but nothing like the complications with the twins. 8 months in, she gave birth to another son. They named him Kyle, a human name that Lyria chose because she loved how it sounded. Kyle was different from the twins. He was quieter, more introspective. Where Darian was bold and Alara was curious, Kyle was thoughtful and gentle. Jake loved watching his 3 children interact, each one unique but part of the same family. As the years continued, Jake's role in the Empire became more defined. He was not just a consort or a genetic donor. He was a true co-ruler with Lyria, respected for his wisdom and compassion. When the Empire faced difficult decisions, both rulers were consulted. Their different perspectives, human and Valtheris, created balanced and fair policies. Jake also became an advocate for other mixed-species families. As more humans and Valtheris formed relationships, questions arose about citizenship, property rights, and cultural identity. Jake worked to create laws that protected these families and honored both their heritages. One day, when Darian was 10, he asked Jake a question that struck deep. "Papa, do you ever wish you had stayed on Earth? Don't you miss your old life?" They were in Jake's study, and Jake put down the book he was reading to give his son full attention. "Sometimes I miss Earth. I miss simple things like baseball games and hamburgers. I miss the way rain smells there. But I wouldn't trade my life here for anything." "Why not?" Darian asked. Jake pulled his son close. "Because here I have you. Your sister, your brother, and your mother. I have a purpose that matters. I get to help 2 species learn to live together. That's worth more than any life I could have had on Earth." Darian seemed satisfied with that answer, but then asked another question. "Do you think I'll be a good prince someday?" Jake smiled. "I think you'll be an amazing prince. You have your mother's strength and intelligence. You have compassion and fairness. And you have something special that no other Valtheris prince has ever had." "What's that?" "You understand both humans and Valtheris. You can see things from both perspectives. That makes you uniquely qualified to lead in a galaxy where our species are learning to work together." On the twins' 15th birthday, Jake and Lyria made an announcement. They would be taking the children to Earth for an extended visit. It would be Darian and Alara's first time on their father's homeworld. Kyle, now 10, was excited too. The journey took weeks, even with faster-than-light travel. When they finally arrived in Earth's solar system, Jake felt a mix of emotions. He had not been home in 20 years. Landing in Colorado, near where Jake had grown up, felt surreal. The farm where he had spent his childhood was now a museum, preserved as the birthplace of the prince consort. Jake laughed at the absurdity of it. "This is where you lived?" Alara asked, looking at the simple farmhouse. "This is where I grew up," Jake confirmed. "Your grandmother and grandfather worked this land for 40 years. They spent months on Earth, traveling to different countries and cultures. The children were fascinated by Earth's diversity. They had known intellectually that humans came in many varieties, but seeing it was different. They met humans of every skin color, every belief system, every background. Valtheris are all so similar," Darian noted. "Humans are so different from each other." "That's our strength," Jake explained. "We learn to accept differences because we have so many of them. It makes us adaptable." The visit to Earth changed the children. They returned to Valtheron Prime with a deeper understanding of their human heritage. They also had a mission. They wanted to make the Valtheris Empire more accepting of diversity, not just between species, but within species. Jake watched his children grow into remarkable individuals. Darian became a skilled diplomat, using his abilities to mediate conflicts. Alara developed a passion for science, working at the Morrison-Velshara Institute on new medical research. Kyle showed an artistic talent, creating works that blended human and Valtheris styles. As Jake entered his 60s, he looked back on his life with satisfaction. He had left Earth as a young scientist with dreams of exploring the stars. He had found something better than exploration. He had found family, purpose, and a way to make a real difference in the universe. Lyria, who would live for centuries more, sometimes worried about the day when Jake would age beyond her. But Jake did not fear death. He had lived a full life, richer than he ever imagined possible. "When I'm gone," he told her one night, "our children will carry on. They'll continue building bridges between humans and Valtheris. That's my real legacy. Not any title or position." Lyria held him close. "You will be remembered as the human who saved the Valtheris Empire." Jake shook his head. "I'd rather be remembered as a good father and a loving husband. That matters more than empires." Years continued to pass. More grandchildren came, all of them hybrid, all of them healthy and strong. The royal bloodline was secure. The Valtheris Empire flourished. Relations between humans and Valtheris grew into a true partnership. On his 80th birthday, Jake sat in the palace gardens with Lyria, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and friends from both species. He looked around at the faces, human and Valtheris, living together in harmony. This was what he had helped create, not through conquest or force, but through love and cooperation. "You changed the galaxy," Ryan said, raising a glass in toast. Ryan was old now, too, his hair white, but his friendship was as strong as ever. Jake smiled. "No, we changed the galaxy, all of us together. That's the only way change ever happens." As the celebration continued, Jake felt Lyria's hand in his. Through their bond, he felt her love, her gratitude, her joy. And he knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges the future held, humanity and the Valtheris would face them together, because he had shown them that different species could not only coexist, but thrive together. That was a legacy worth any sacrifice. That was a life well lived.